Most content creators tend to just start making content out of nowhere with nobody knowing who they are or even what they want to do. They really just look at people whose content they like and try to form their own version of that content, who they want to be as a content creator. Eventually, as they grow and start getting traction, they are able to gauge what their community wants, create a formula for their content, and make the creation of that content much faster. There comes tradition in that sort of form, and some of those traditions are culturally exclusive to the community or the scene that they are born from. And in VTubing, there's one little interesting tradition that a lot of VTubers do, even those that actually might not need to even do it, and that is the concept of debuting. But before we continue, let me introduce to you Talkie AI. Look, AI is the future, and shitposting is its first and best use right now. With Talkie, you can hit up any of your favorite fictional characters and just engage in the most random stuff possible. I mean, look at this. Hey G-Man, do you want to do certain acts with Mothra? Yep, Talkie is definitely a way to spend your free time. And speaking of free, Talkie is absolutely free. You can even create your own AI for shits and giggles. Any AI for that matter, my dude. In any way you want them to behave, appear, and sound like. Somebody made this Sukuna AI bot that's like super horny. Jesus Christ, what have they done to goat? Chatbots have been an internet staple when it comes to shitposting and making funnies. I mean, do you guys remember Tay? Pepperidge Farm remembers. So yes, go get Talkie AI today using my link in the description. Ad over. A debut is essentially a PowerPoint presentation declaring your presence in this industry. It's a whole big event where you are introduced to the set of audiences that the VTuber agency might have. Indie VTubers have the option to just hit the go live button and just, actually start making content, and in that case, a debut is not necessary. Well, kind of. It depends on what sort of content creator they are, their community, and how they got into VTubing. Regular flesh streamers who turn to VTubing will find themselves just becoming a VTuber and continue to make their content without a debut at all. Sure, they can showcase their model, but there won't really be any PowerPoint presentation describing who they are because the fanbase already knows. The same case can also apply when they're already well known in a certain community, like they're a friend of somebody or a moderator of someone that's famous, although they themselves can debut if they want to. Content creators who got into content creating as VTubers or as part of an anime community but decided to revamp their model will have a little something called a re-debut, or a debut 2.0 if they already did do a debut in the past and just wanted to rebrand, especially if they're from an old agency and is reintegrated into a new one. It's basically a reintroduction to who they are to the fanbase of this new community. Back then, VTuber debuts were pretty much 30 minutes of introduction and then another 30 minutes of filler. But these days, VTuber debuts are normally limited to 20 to 40 minutes, or somewhere around that length, because short and sweet is currently what works, and honestly I do prefer it that way. The following days are pretty important as well, known as pre-debuts. It's the activity that the VTubers have that'll hopefully get some people to go watch the actual debut stream. During this time, they will tweet, shitpost, meme, and make all sorts of engagement bait in order to get the most eyes on them. VTuber agencies also employ the use of debut teasers or previews, and if some VTubers are daring, they might even get themselves into a little bit of drama. Normally, for a debut, they pretty much showcase their model and every single fine detail of it, and then show the slides that showcase these specific information. These information serve as a means to let people know who you are as a VTuber, and whether or not you're the type of VTuber that they might be interested in following in the future, based on whether or not you have similar interests, and whether or not they can vibe with you. And that's pretty much the goal of every single VTuber debut. It's to let people know who you are, showcase your skills and talents, to get you to find your crowd and your crowd to find you. It's kind of a big deal because, again, your debut stream is going to be the first stream you'll ever have as your persona, and for a lot of VTubers, it's the most views they'll ever have on stream. First impressions matter after all, so it's ill-advised to screw up heavily during your debut or to be super boring and uncreative. In fact, that's pretty much a very common criticism against the culture, because VTuber debuts are super formulaic, and theoretically, because the crux of the content is just telling people about yourself, it can be super boring. And I have to be honest, most VTuber debuts that I've seen kinda are, even if I consider the fact that they might not just be the one for me. However, I think that's really only a problem if you struggle to think of ways to introduce yourself in more creative manners. I think VTuber debuts are really only boring if the VTuber doesn't actually know how to showcase their personality and skills in an entertaining way. And in some ways, I don't blame them, because really, the concept of introducing yourself is pretty straightforward, very limiting. Thinking up of ways to spice that up is a task that's easier said than done. You really have to know your strengths and start with your best foot forward. That's why, to spice up their debut, some people involve the use of lore videos or funny haha moments, or lore videos that are funny haha moments, or sometimes actual fucking cinematic art pieces. The effectiveness of this in terms of spicing up your debut is not that great. I mean, 2 to 5 minutes of content that has barely anything to do with your personality or entertainment ability isn't going to make up for the 25 minutes of introduction if it's boring. Let's be real here. It's a lot of pressure, I know. A lot of VTubers get very nervous when they debut, especially if they're debuting under a well-renowned agency and it's their first exposure to a massive crowd of people. A lot of agency VTubers suffer from this immense pressure because they are the chosen few that manage to get in. They are representatives of an all-powerful corpo, and to be a failure would be to disappoint not just the corpos, but also the fans that believed in those corpos. To a lot of VTuber fans and applicants, the privilege of being in a corpo is something that they think have to be earned by their merit. They need to find a reason why they were chosen. That somehow you are the best among the literal thousands that applied. Expectations are going to be massive during debuts, and it's very easy to crumble under this expectation and make you fuck up. Sometimes, the debut nerves get in the way of actually displaying the talent and skill you might have. Plenty of VTubers who had debuts that could have been better, in my opinion, have turned out to be extremely excellent talents after they got comfortable and just started vibing. Hell, the fucking god dog herself, Inugami Korone, the picture of dog VTubers, arguably has one of the most infamously disastrous debuts ever. Her nerves, inexperience in the technology, and how to manage things forced her to just call in her friends for backup. And look where she is now, she's a goddamn legend. Sometimes, debuts can really turn bad outside of your control, especially in the technical department. Scarlett Yonagoni of Niji-en is another example. She had a really bad start as well because of internet-related issues, forcing her to restream a second time and suffering huge losses in viewerships because of it. Yet again, Scarlett seems to have a universally positive reputation among not just Niji-en fans but general VTuber fans as well, even before this whole Niji-en bad sentiment reached its breaking point. And the circumstances behind those two examples I just listed is very important. I know I said first impressions matter, and they do, don't get me wrong. But in the grand scheme of things, they don't really matter all that much. Many fans are understanding. Many VTubers back in the past were also absolutely messy as well. If you have the entertainment ability that can more than make up for a scuffed debut, you can minimize the impact of that disaster, and it can even make up for a good underdog story. Debuts are not the end-all be-all as a VTuber. I have seen some really good debuts whose VTubers I eventually dropped because they just couldn't live up to the image and impression that their debuts gave them. Some people kneecap themselves by making a false impression on their debut, and that's a bad thing. It's better to grow slowly than to have a massive following overnight and give a false impression. You just eventually stagnate and decay. There's really no need to overthink debuts, brother. There's no need to have these super expensive sets and super fancy graphics, and these wild, cool animation segments, although they kinda help sometimes. Introductions, like I said, are super simple. So keep it simple. Don't try too hard. Because if you do, it's going to seem super scripted and you're going to appear robotic instead of being, entertaining. Just be yourself. Now that being said, how do you organize a unique and memorable debut in the first place? Just be yourself is not necessarily a cool and good, it's a stupid fucking advice basically. But if you paid attention, I just told you how to make a unique and memorable debut. Find out who you are first and what sort of content you think you want to make. If you're funny, make jokes and make skits. If you're comfy, set a soothing vibe. If you're bratty, be smug and tease the chat. If you're a yapper, revolve your debut into a fun yapping session. If you're cute and funny, be cute and funny. If you're sexy, make the chat hard. If you're a gamer, speedrun a game or something. Or, throw out slurs like a real gamer would. The controversies that'll come out from that will get you views at least. I can't tell anyone any specific advice because ultimately, you and those around you, especially your manager if you have one, are really the only people who knows what your strengths are and how to show that off on your debut. In short, you don't need to overthink your debut, but you still do need to think about it. And yeah, that's really about it. See ya.